To Bennet Langton, Esquire. Dear Sir, after much lingering of my own, and much of the ministry, I have at length got out my paper. This paper, a footnote tells us, is the thoughts on the late transactions respecting Falklands Islands. But delay is not yet at an end. Not many had been dispersed before Lord North ordered the sale to stop. His reasons I do not distinctly know. You may try to find them in the perusal. There's a footnote here that says, by comparing the first with the subsequent editions, the curious circumstance of ministerial authorship may be discovered. Before his order, a sufficient number were dispersed to do all the mischief, though perhaps not to make all the sport that might be expected from it. Soon after your departure, I had the pleasure of finding all the danger past with which your navigation was threatened. I hope nothing happens at home to abate your satisfaction, but the Lady Roths and Mrs. Langton and the young ladies are all well. It was last night at the club. Dr. Percy had written a long ballad in many fits. It is pretty enough. He has printed and will soon publish it. Goldsmith is at Bath with Lord Clare, and Mr. Thrale's, where I am now writing, all are well. I am, dear sir, your most humble servant, March 20th, 1771, Sam Johnson. Boswell here. Mr. Strahan, the printer, who had been long in intimacy with Johnson, in the course of his literary labors, who was at once his friendly agent in receiving his pension for him, and his banker in supplying him with money when he wanted it, who was himself now a member of Parliament, and who loved much to be employed in political negotiation, though he should do eminent service both to government and Johnson, if he could by the means of his getting a seat in the House of Commons. With this view, he wrote a letter to one of the secretaries of the Treasury, of which he gave me a copy of his own handwriting, which is as follows. Sir, you will easily recollect, when I had the honor of waiting upon you some time ago, I took the liberty to observe to you that Dr. Johnson would make an excellent figure in the House of Commons, and heartily wishes he had a seat there. My reasons are briefly these. I know his perfect good affection to his Majesty and his government, which I am certain he wishes to support by every means in his power. He possesses a great share of manly, nervous, and ready eloquence. Manly, nervous, and ready eloquence. Is quick in discerning the strength and weakness of an argument, can express himself with clearness and precision, and fears the face of no man alive. His known character as a man of extraordinary sense and unimpeached virtue would secure him the attention of the House, and could not fail to give him a proper weight there. He is capable of the greatest application, and can undergo any degree of labor, where he sees it necessary, and where his heart and affections are strongly engaged. His Majesty's ministers might therefore securely depend on his doing, upon every proper occasion, the utmost that could be expected from him. They would find him ready to vindicate such measures as tended to promote the stability of government, and resolute and steady in carrying them into execution. Nor is anything to be apprehended from the supposed impetuosity of his temper. To the friends of the king you will find him a lamb, to his enemies a lion. For these reasons, I humbly apprehend that he would be a very able and useful member. And I will venture to say the employment would not be disagreeable to him, and knowing, as I do, his strong affection to the king, his ability to serve him in the capacity, and the extreme ardor with which I am convinced he would engage in that service, I must repeat that I wish most heartily to see him in the House. If you think this worthy of attention, you will be pleased to take a convenient opportunity of mentioning it to Lord North. If his lordship should happily approve of it, I shall have the satisfaction of having been, in some degree, the humble instrument of doing my country, in my opinion, a very essential service. I know your good nature and your zeal for the public welfare will plead my excuse for giving you this trouble. I am, with the greatest respect, sir, your most obedient and humble servant, New Street, March 30th, 1771. William Strahan. This recommendation, we know, was not effectual. But how, or for what reason, can only be conjectured. It is not to be believed that Mr. Strahan would have applied unless Johnson had approved of it. I never heard him mention the subject, but at a later period of his life, when Sir Joshua Reynolds told him that Mr. Edmund Burke had said that if he had come early into Parliament, he certainly would have been the greatest speaker there ever was there, Johnson exclaimed, "I should like to try my hand now." It has been much agitated among his friends and others whether he would have been a powerful speaker in Parliament, had he been brought in when advanced in life. I am inclined to think that his extensive knowledge, his quickness and force of mind, his vivacity and richness of expression, his wit and humor, and above all his poignancy of sarcasm, would have had great effect in a popular assembly, and that the magnitude of his figure and striking peculiarity of his manner would have aided the effect. But I remember it was observed by Mr. Flood that Johnson, having been long used to sententious brevity and the short flights of conversation, might have failed in that continued and expanded kind of argument, which is requisite in stating complicated matters in public speaking. And as a proof of this, he mentioned the supposed speeches in Parliament written by him for the magazine, none of which, in his opinion, were at all like real debates. The opinion of one who was himself so eminent an orator must be allowed to have great weight. It was confirmed by Sir William Scott, who mentioned that Johnson had told him that he had several times tried to speak to the Society of Arts and Sciences, but had found he could not get on. From Mr. William Gerard Hamilton I have heard that Johnson, when observed to him that it was prudent for a man who had not been accustomed to speak in public to begin his speech in as simple a manner as possible, acknowledged that he rose in that society to deliver a speech which he had prepared. "But," said he, "all my flowers of oratory forsook me." I, however, cannot help wishing that he had tried his hand in Parliament, and I wonder that Ministry did not make the experiment. I at length renewed a correspondence which had been too long discontinued. Edinburgh, April 18, 1771. To Dr. Johnson. My dear Sir, I can now fully understand those intervals of silence in your correspondence with me which have often given me anxiety and uneasiness. For although I am conscious that my veneration and love for Mr. Johnson have never in the least abated, yet I have deferred for almost a year and a half to write to him. In the subsequent part of this letter, I gave him an account of my comfortable life as a married man, and a lawyer in practice in the Scotch bar, invited him to Scotland, and promised to attend to him to the Highlands and the Hebrides. He wrote back, to James Boswell, Esquire. Dear Sir, if you are now able to comprehend that I might neglect to write without diminution of affection, you have taught me, likewise, how that neglect may be uneasily felt without resentment. I wished for your letter a long time, and when it came, it amply recompensed the delay. I never was so much pleased as now with your account of yourself, and sincerely hope that between public business, improving studies, and domestic pleasures, neither melancholy nor caprice will find any place for entrance. Whatever philosophy may determine of material nature, it is certainly true of intellectual nature that it abhors a vacuum. Our mind cannot be empty, and evil will break in upon them if they are not preoccupied by good. My dear sir, mind your studies, mind your business, make your lady happy, and be a good Christian. After this, Transillium et metus tratus praedepis in mire Christicum portare ventus. Sadness and fear I will commit to the wild winds to take with them to the Cretan sea. Which is, of course, from Horace's Odes. If we perform our duty, we shall be safe and steady, sive per, and etc. Siv per ceteris iter estrus factu, and etc. Whether to be going to make his way through the surf of the Cites or not, from Horace's Odes. Whether we climb the highlands or are tossed among the Hebrides, and I hope the time will come when we may try our power both with cliff and water. I see but land of Lord Ellerbeck, I know not why. Perhaps my own fault. I am this day going into Staffordshire and Derbyshire, and for 6 weeks. I am, dear sir, your most affectionate and most humble servant, London, June 20th, 1771, Sam Johnson. Trying to think of the city I keep on. It's Leicestershire, but that doesn't come up yet. For a while, at least. Oh, wait. I stand corrected. The next letter says, to Sir Joshua Reynolds in Leicester Fields, I'm guessing. Leicester. So I guess that's pronounced Leicester Fields. Dear Sir, when I came to Lichfield, and now I'm lost again. Lichfield, I found that my portrait had been much visited and much admired. Every man has a lurking wish to appear considerable in his native place, and I was pleased with the dignity conferred by such a testimony of your regard. Be pleased, therefore, to accept the thanks of, sir, your most obliged and most humble servant, Ashbourne in Derbyshire, Sam Johnson, July 17, 1771. Compliments to Miss Reynolds. To Dr. Johnson. My dear sir, Edinburgh, July 27, 1771. My dear sir, the bearer of this, Mr. Beattie, professor of moral philosophy at Aberdeen, is desirous of being introduced to your acquaintance. His genius in learning and labors in the service of virtue and religion render him very worthy of it, and as he has a high esteem of your character, I hope you will give him a favorable reception. I ever am, etc. James Boswell. To Bennet Langton, Esquire, at Langton, near Spilsby, Lincolnshire. Dear Sir, I am lately returned from Staffordshire and Derbyshire. All these shears are coming up now. The last letter mentions 2 others which you have written to me since you received my pamphlet. Of these 2 I never had but one, in which you mention a design of visiting Scotland and, by consequence, put my journey to Langton out of my thoughts. My summer wanderings are now over, and I am engaged at a very great work, the revision of my dictionary, from which I know not, at present, how to get loose. If you have observed, or been told, any errors or omissions, you will do me a great favor by letting me know them. Lady Rothes, I find, has disappointed you in herself. Ladies will have these tricks. The Queen and Mrs. Thrale, both ladies of experience, yet both missed their reckoning this summer. I hope a few months will recompose your uneasiness. Please to tell Lady Rothes how highly I value the honor of her invitation, which it is my purpose to obey as soon as I have disengaged myself. In the meantime, I shall hope to hear often of her ladyship, and every day better news and better, till I hear that you have both the happiness which to both is very sincerely wished by, Sir, your most affectionate and most humble servant, August 29th, 1771, Sam Johnson. In October, I again wrote to Johnson, thanking him for his last letter and his obliging reception of Mr. Beattie, informing him that I had been at Alnwick lately, and had good accounts of him from Dr. Percy. In his religious record of this year, we observed that he was better than usual, both in body and mind, and better satisfied with the regularity of his conduct. But he is still trying his ways, too rigorously. He charges himself with not rising early enough, yet he mentions that he was surely a sufficient excuse for this. He mentions what was surely a sufficient excuse for this, supposing it to be a duty seriously required, as he all his life appears to have thought it. Quote, "One great hindrance is want of rest. My nocturnal complaints grow less troublesome towards morning, and I am tempted to repair the deficiencies of the night. Alas! How hard would it be if this indulgence were to be imputed to a sick man as a crime?" In his retrospect of the following Easter Eve, Johnson says, "When I review the last year, I am able to recollect so little done, that shame and sorrow, though perhaps too weakly, come upon me." Had Johnson been judging of anyone else in the same circumstances, how clear would he have been on the favorable side? How very difficult, and in my opinion almost constitutionally impossible it was, for him to be raised early, even by the strongest resolutions, appears from a note in one of his little paper books, containing words arranged for his dictionary, written, I suppose, about 1753. Quoting this, "I do not remember that since I left Oxford I ever rose early by mere choice, but once or twice at Edial, and 2 or 3 times for the Rambler." I think Johnson, he had a fair ground enough to have quieted his mind on this subject by concluding that he was physically incapable of what it is at best but a commodious regulation. Some good, so if you're a night owl, just tell people Johnson was couldn't get up in the morning either. In 1772, he was altogether quiescent as an author, but it will be found from the various evidences which I shall bring together that his mind was acute, lively, and vigorous. To Sir Joshua Reynolds. Dear Sir, be pleased to send to Mr. Banks, whose place of residence I do not know, this note, which I have sent open, that, if you please, you may read it. When you send it, do not use your own seal. I am, sir, your most humble servant, February 27, 1772, Sam Johnson. Then I believe this is the letter inside here. To Joseph Banks, Esquire. Peripetus. Immediate historia primitia iactus hae habet atrosae capra secunda Jovis, which of course translates as, in fame scarce second to the nurse of Jove, this goat, who twice the world has traversed round, deserving both his master's care and love, ease and perpetual pasture, now has found. Sir, I return thanks to you and to Dr. Solander for the pleasure which I received in your yesterday's conversation. I could not recollect a motto for your goat, but have given her one. You, sir, may perhaps have an epic poem from some happier pen than, Sir, your most humble servant, Johnson's Court, Fleet Street, February 27, 1772, Sam Johnson. So that was a little motto for a goat. I'll read it again. In fame scarce second to the nurse of Jove, this goat, who twice the world has traversed round, deserving both her master's care and love, ease and perpetual pasture, now has found. Using his talents wisely, that Johnson. Till next time, bye from Boswell.